Some say it was advanced warning that saved lives. Sirens were sounding at least 30 minutes before the storm hit.
I thought it was just a typical thunderstorm until the tornado sirens went off.
You can see the path of devastation left behind by the huge tornado.
My mission is to, today though, is to lift people's spirits as best as I possibly can.
I was scared witless the night of April 3rd, 1974. That was the super outbreak of tornadoes, largest outbreak in recorded history in North America. And it's burned indelibly into my brain. The voice of Wendell Harris, the anchor of WAPI television, Channel 13, come on and talk about tornado warnings have been issued in eastern Mississippi. And then tornado warnings were being issued in western Alabama, including the town of Guin. That scared the heck out of me. And out of that fear, I wanted to learn more about the atmosphere, I guess, as a way to mitigate that fear.
Photos come in. This one here came in from Cheryl, and this is another shot of the front of the YMCA. So we've seen it now from a couple different vantage points.
Let me go back and do some of the tornado warning coverage here. Frank, I heard the ding, and I got a feeling that some of the tornado watch counties are being canceled. So if you could update a tornado watch map.
What does a meteorologist do? My job is to forecast the weather, but maybe more importantly than just forecasting it, it's figuring out what are the threats, what are the inconveniences, and how do we actively communicate that in a form that's useful to normal people living busy lives.
Broadcast meteorologists obviously need to be sufficient, pointing, and have the right motions, not be too aggressive and not be too laxed. But as a meteorologist, my job does not stop after my job is over. Honestly, this job is 24/7, 365. I constantly think about weather.
A good meteorologist has to be passionate about their job. You have to enjoy coming in every day and trying to figure out why is the atmosphere doing what it's going to do, and then applying the laws of physics in order to say, okay, well, if it's doing this today and here's why, then this is what it's going to be doing tomorrow and the next several days ahead. And then you've got to be able to communicate that to people that are interested in the forecast.
You have to connect with your viewers. If you're not connecting, all the work you do in the forecast, understanding the science, is wasted.
You can be the best meteorologist in the world, but if you cannot communicate the forecast where people can understand it, you haven't done your job.
News director is the person who oversees the entire operation. You are where the buck stops. Viewers hear sirens and they think it's news. Well, that's not necessarily the case. We have criteria that we follow. We don't cover every shooting. We don't cover every house fire. They have to reach a certain level of severity before we cover them.
Because we only have a very short time to tell a story. So we just have to really look at the story and decide, okay, what would be important to me to know if I was a viewer? And then we decide what we report and what we don't.
Sometimes we have to make editorial decisions based on our staffing too. We have such a large geographic market that it takes 7 hours to drive from one edge of the market to the other. Is it smart? Is it that we send somebody 4 hours out of town where they won't get there in time for the 5 and 6 o'clock news?
And it looks as though we are setting up for another severe weather day today. Tanner Swift live in the Cakeland Weatherplex this morning with your first look outside. Hey, Tanner.
Hi, good morning.
Are you familiar with the Greensburg tornado?
Oh yeah, I was watching people's coverage, and I was in California. I've talked to Jay about that day, and he tells me, we're going the entire day. It's somewhat cool out. It does not seem like the storms are going to pop.
Well, we're kind of playing watch and wait for the development of severe weather across parts of south central to southwestern Kansas. So let's look outside the sky tracker. We've had quite a little bit of cloud cover, but some occasional sunshine, which has really helped warm us up. But as we look across western Kansas, we're going out there.
Early on, it didn't look like anything other than a typical Kansas severe weather day. By the time the storm started moving in on Greensburg, that changed.
I was definitely paying attention. I was home. I was on the phone with my stepmom, who still lives out on the farm, because Greensburg is right there by Pratt. And yeah, I was watching the whole thing.
I remember the day of Greensburg because I made a forecast that day, and some of my classmates made forecasts that day. And we had the discussion, do we go chase or not?
You know what's crazy? And not to go off in a different path, but out of everyone's coverage, the one that drew me the most was Jay's.
This is meteorologist Jay Prater along with Matt Makins. We're here in the Cakeland Weatherplex, and unfortunately we're watching a very dangerous situation unfold across Kiowa County. We're keeping you updated during the commercial breaks on the rest of the network, but we are live continuous on. There was no doubt, once this event got in progress, once the violent tornado developed, even before it impacted Greensburg, we knew where it was, we knew where it was going, and we were sounding the alarm over and over and over again.
We knew it was going to be a severe weather outbreak of some type. I don't remember the details of it, but it was one of those rare days where I guess you would call it, layman's terms, a tornado emergency.
We had it covered in terms of the weather department. We knew that there was a risk of severe weather. A risk of severe weather happens frequently in Cakeland during the spring, so it was not unusual to have this kind of setup. I'm engaged in the television coverage continuously at this point. Matt Makins contacted Dave Grant and said, essentially, I hope we're wrong, but unfortunately it looks like Greensburg is probably going to be impacted by a very large violent tornado. Here's your heads up for Dave Grant to get the news department involved with the coverage at that point.
I was here overnight. We assigned crews, and then we had to figure out how we're going to get additional crews there. Really, it was such a big story, it was the only story.
I remember talking to my friends saying, if a storm can break the cap, it's going to be off the charts.
What we're watching and waiting is the atmosphere. If it develops thunderstorms that can become severe very quickly, we're talking about a tornado threat. But we have an area in the atmosphere, a lid or a cap, if you will, that we've got to break through. Right now it's holding very strong. Hopefully it will hold strong. That will eliminate the severe thunderstorms.
In simplest terms, the cap is kind of a lid in the atmosphere. It holds the energy down.
And there's an atmospheric profile that we call a loaded gun. And if you ever see a loaded gun on an atmospheric sounding, which is basically a map of the upper atmosphere, it means that the atmosphere is a ticking time bomb for severe weather.
And so it's all about how quickly is the air rising. That's what causes thunderstorms. That's why you go from a clear blue sky to a severe thunderstorm in 30 minutes or less, because once that cap's gone, all that energy is able to be realized. And then it's these powerful rotating thunderstorms that can cause the violent tornadoes.
If X, Y, and Z all come together, it's going to be a very bad day.
Annie, how close are you to the county line?
We have passed the county line already, Jay.
Okay, so you're north of the county line of the tornado.
We have two tornadoes on the ground, Jay. We have a small, a medium, if you will, to my northeast. We have a very large.
I can't believe it's been this long, man.
Long time.
You know, what was going through your mind that day?
Something felt weird that day. I don't know. I don't want to say it was a premonition or anything like that, but I recall you telling me it's a wait and see kind of day.
The storm chasers meet with Jay and they decide where they're going to be placed before the storms develop. In this case, Lanny Dean, our storm chaser, was in exactly the right place, and he saw the Greensburg tornado develop. He followed it into town and just had some riveting coverage.
Let's go back to Lanny Dean. Lanny, we're now live on the entire Cakeland television network. Tell us what you see.
Jay, currently right now, just to let you know my position, I am on 160 highway headed west, and I do have a very large funnel at this time, Jay. Very large funnel back towards the area of, okay, tornado on the ground, Jay. Tornado on the ground, definite tornado on the ground. Near, I'm going to put it close to Sitka.
Our chaser Lanny Dean reporting a very large tornado on the ground. This is about 12 miles southwest of Greensburg.
For a whole 65 minutes, that tornado is on the ground covering 28 miles.
Through Dodge City and through Cake and through everybody. And they knew there was going to be a destructive tornado. We just didn't know for sure how big it was going to be. We didn't even really have a emergency operations plan before the tornado, so we really weren't prepared for anything like that. But I was able to hear our emergency EMS director. Tim Smith was south on 183. He could see it. We had a deputy that was south of town. He could see it. So we were just listening to radio traffic back and forth and knew that it was coming directly towards town. It was more of an, oh crap, this is really going to happen type thing.
It was probably about 9:20 when the tornado siren went off, so we went to the basement, but also like a typical Kansan transplant, I went back upstairs after probably 10 minutes of the tornado siren blasting and looked out the front door. It was just blurry, so I thought, well, I might as well go back downstairs. Nothing to see here. And it wasn't very long before I could feel the hail and the rain on my back. I was hunched over my family and I could feel that. Our house literally lifted and left.
When we got to the edge of town, we were a little early. The tornado was still in town. However, the wind, updraft behind the tornado was tremendous. One of our fire guys was east of town and he kept trying to get to dispatch. Well, at that point, dispatch was going downstairs. The lady that screamed on the tape was actually one of our deputies' wives. He had been a deputy for us for a long time, and she was at home but had his radio with her. So the scream that you heard was actually her as the tornado was going through her house.
And I remember just praying, Lord, keep us. Lord, keep us. I just kept saying that over and over. I couldn't hear what my wife and daughter were saying because the wind was so loud. And then it was over. Suddenly, it was completely silent.
That's at 125. Go ahead.
What is the direction of travel on the tornado? What's its path?
Stand by and I'll see.
12457. Have you been able to visually see it at all? I've not.
One's okay. 10-4. Tim, what do you see right now? I am at mile marker just north of 49, and I see a very large tornado on the ground north of me, directly straight north of 183.
10-4. Is this the west tornado or the east tornado that was there before?
Thinking this is the west one.
That puts you, what, still 6 south, 7 south of Greensburg?
Affirmative.
10-4.
Was there a tornado east of Greensburg also?
Now there were a number of tornadoes. The big one we have right now is just 183 headed straight north towards Greensburg.
Guancoa County, I'm going to be at a destroyed house south on 183. I'm going to see if I can't find any victims. And if you copy as soon as you can, I'm going to need some help with some rescue out here on South 183. I got victims. I can't tell where they're at.
Here's the Greensburg, just lost all power. All the lights went out in Greensburg. Greensburg taking direct hit at this time.
What do you see from where you're at?
Nothing but night, man. Quarter-sized hailstones. And so can you get a location where the people trapped at? Like the hospital.
Hospital or the high school?
Where are the children trapped?
Oh.